welcome back to another edition of Pandanomics, New York Weekly's #1 podcast. And we are back in season 3, and we're hitting out with a pretty big bang. And I got to tell you, we are joined by the one and only Richard Wong, an amazing director, filmmaker, creative mind, and genius. And it's kind of interesting how I meet most people. I just reach out to them on social media, and we start talking a little bit, and we bond. And, you know, you just did a new movie called The Valet on Hulu. And talk a little bit about that experience and how you kind of got that happening, got into filmmaking.
Hey, well, thanks for having me, first of all. It's awesome to be here. You know, The Valet came from a really interesting story because, you know, I used to be a DP. So, you know, I was a DP for, you know, a while. And, you know, I got my start directing. But then for whatever reason, I kind of went down this DP path, which was perfectly fine with me because being a DP, a director of photography, is like the most awesome job in the whole world. So it wasn't like, you know, it wasn't really a problem. But I at some point in my career, I thought, hey, I actually wanted to be a director. So I actually made my previous film, which is called Come As You Are. And that, you know, that effectively ended my DP career. And, you know, interestingly enough, you know, The Valet was supposed to be made before the pandemic with different directors. You know, the guys who directed Eugenio's last movie, Overboard. These guys, Bob and Rob, who are awesome, amazing guys. And so they were going to direct this movie, and it had been greenlit before the pandemic, and it got shut down because of the pandemic. So, you know, but before it got shut down, the producer of the movie, I had actually shot a DP to movie for before, and he called me actually to DP The Valet. And so he called me up, and I'm like, "Oh, dude, I'm not DPing anymore." He's like, "What? What do you do then?" I'm directing. He's like, "Oh my gosh, let me check out your film." So he checked out my last film, Come As You Are, loved it, and then he's like, "Well, you know, we'll have to figure something out one day." So the pandemic hit, they closed down the movie, and then they lose their directors who also wrote the movie. So they lose their directors to a TV show, and the movie got re-greenlit during the pandemic, and they're like, well, we need a new director. And because Ben had saw my movie, Ben Odell, the producer, he thought I'd be an interesting choice for the movie. And so, you know, he gave me a chance to do a presentation for it, and I gave this presentation that was very much all about my family, and then more specifically more about my dad, because I feel like Antonio very much is my dad. And I presented it to Lionsgate and Hulu, and I got it, and here I am.
That's a pretty amazing "here I am," man, and that goes to a lot of what we talk about on the podcast about being nice to people and how opportunity knocks and how timing is and how you have to basically have the balls to go for it, right? Like you had to tell the guy that I'm not DPing, this is what I do, look at me, and I have the confidence to do that, and that's a very, like, I think people misconstrue how hard that is to do. Like, it's not easy, right? To put yourself out there and really redo that rejection, but you did it and you got the film. And let's talk a little about this film because it hit in so many areas. You know, as I mentioned, I was a partner at Deloitte in Mexico, and obviously grew up in a border town, and my fiance is white, and my parents are obviously Asian. I think they are, at least. And so those things put together, you tell a story about the working man and a big celebrity, and you fuse the missing pieces of both parts, right? You literally fuse the humility and the humbleness of the minority immigrant that comes here, right? You, like you mentioned, much like your father and our parents before us, and then you fuse that without us probably even talking about this mystical celebrity, Americanized, beautiful, you know, white person, right? Who is so far up there, and us as minorities trying to figure out how to merge that lifestyle while still keeping our culture. And then my other favorite part was there was a love story of an elderly age of two different cultures. That language did not matter, but love did, right? And that one part, I mean, you really put this together in such a significant manner. What inspired you to do that? What were these characters based off of when you were doing this type of film? Because it was beautiful, man.
Dude, thanks for saying that, man. I really appreciate that. And yeah, like, you know, I remember when I first met my agents, they're like, what do you want your movies to be about? I was like, humanity. You know, and it's like, because I mean, that's all we have is humanity. And I really do believe that every good movie is ultimately about humanity. And you know, so I think I think with one thing I learned during my time being a DP and before that even, I always learned that my favorite directors that I had worked with and that I know of, they always kind of have an overriding theme for every movie, and it helps everybody. It helps the actors and it helps all the department heads, and it gives everyone a North Star. And our particular North Star was very much, finding human connection in places you wouldn't expect. So here you have this woman who's the biggest star in the world. What we'd always thought of as Julia Roberts in the '90s level. And my dad, and a working man, invisible, head down immigrant who very much is invisible so that his kids can be visible. I mean, there's a reason why we made the son.
Wow, that was beautiful, man.
Oh, thanks, man. But it all, like, every decision we made was all based on that. Like the reason why we made the son a Shakespearean actor is because that's the most visible thing we could possibly think of, for the son, And so I think in my sense, I'm Marco in the movie. I'm the son. I've become visible because my dad has been invisible for me. So that's always been our North Star. And I think the idea that this big star in the world, the most visible person in the world, feels invisible in her glass tower on a hill, completely alone. Like, we shoot her very much alone all the time. That kind of connection, because you wouldn't think that those two people would have any connection. But I think her feeling invisible, being the most visible woman in the world, and him feeling invisible, being actually the most invisible person in the world, I think is a really touching idea, and something that I think it goes to show that we all still have stuff in common. I mean, the truth is this: we live in this extraordinarily divided world. It's getting more divided every day. I don't think that's hyperbole. We've got to find connection if we're going to survive. And so that's the same thing with all the way down the line. And there's a reason why everything's in a movie. It's like, Mr. Kim and Mom, they don't speak the same language, but they have a connection, and like the two detectives, they've got a connection, even the valet and the assistant, they have what game is it?
They have a connection.
They have a connection, and I just think that's the idea. The idea is that we all have a connection somewhere. You just have to find it.
What's beautiful about that, and I think we talk about connectedness, this world, as connected as we are, I think we don't have the wholesomeness, right? We grew up in a generation where, like, as Asian Americans, we had to assimilate to the culture. So I'm sure with you, I knew everything about Michael Jordan, everything about Fresh Prince, and everything about Family Matters, and everything about Full House. Because, in every music and every line, because it somehow masked my identity, or at least enhanced who I was to be accepted. And I grew up in a community where it was like 80% Hispanic. So it was definitely very different for me than most people, But we talk about that. And now we see this influx in Hollywood, right? You create this real love where you're not tokenizing the minority, right? You're not making them lesser than, right? You're just telling their story as who they are. And to your point, these invisible parents, they did all this stuff for us, right? And that's a very, very deep thing. You look at Hollywood now, and I watch it, and it's so weird because this morning I literally just saw how everything was such a big deal on Lost because, the two actors were the first Asians in the Main Street thing. Or you talk about how Rich Crazy Asians was such a big deal here and didn't do great in China, unfortunately, right? Because the cultures were so different, right? Yeah. And then I look at Asian men in general, and like we talk about this, like I'm 6'5", 280. And so for me walking in a room in presence has to already exist. But the questions I get, which is you can't be full Chinese, you can't be from Taipei because you're 6'5". I'm like, dude, there's like 2.5 billion of us, or my fiance being, beautiful and she's Caucasian. These limitations you see in Hollywood. I mean, how does that make you feel? Because in some ways it's got to really piss you off, because it pisses me off, right? When I see these roles, I'm like, dude, I'm the dude. Like, I'm the dude with the actors. These are my friends. Right? Like, they ask me questions. It's not the other way around. I'm not the sidekick, right? We're the Justice League together. How does that make you feel in Hollywood with all that stuff?
I mean, look, it's no secret. Hollywood is the way it's been for a long time. It's changing now, and I think that's amazing. Like, but it's always been a thing. And, I think I got my start. I was working as a DIT, which is a digital imaging technician, on network TV shows back in 2000. That's when I started. I was like 23 or something like that. So 24. So that's how I got my start. And back then, for example, first of all, I was the only not just Chinese, I was the only Asian person on the entire crew for like 3 years.
Wow.
And every so often there'd be an Asian guy, but there were always a PA. There was an Asian dude, and then there was an Asian girl. 2 times in those 5 years, only PAs, never more than that. Actually, there's one director, Henry Chen, and then who's amazing. And I like, when I saw him, I was like, oh my God. But I'll get back to that in a second. But like, for example, in those days, and this is 2000. This isn't like 50 years ago. This is 2000, right? I remember being on set and then hearing the DP again, who is a close friend of mine today, but the way it was in Hollywood, he'd be like, "Oh, let's turn the Dolly Chinese." Have you ever heard this term before?
No, I haven't.
So it's like, turn Dolly Chinese. I'm Chinese. I'm like, whoa, what does that mean? He's like, oh, it slanted.
Wow.
I was just like, oh, that's hella offensive. Oh yeah, that's interesting. It's funny because he was like, oh yeah, it is. So now they don't say that anymore. This is 2022. 20 years later, they stopped saying that. That's actually progress. I'll give credit where credit is due. There's progress, and there's definitely, I would say, more Asian American directors today in Hollywood than there ever have been. These are all things I think it's good to recognize progress, and it just means that we can keep going, So I think, so yes, like there's quite a lot of things that I've been offended about over the years, but I think having been in the business for 20-something years now, I also can appreciate the progress that I've seen, because I don't think that's, that deserves its own flowers, I think. But that said, I have a lot of Asian American stories I want to tell, things that when I first directed a movie, which was in 2006, and I was getting all these meetings, stories that nobody would want to tell. And I think part of it goes back to this masculinity thing, because Asian males have been emasculated forever, and especially in Hollywood. Most especially have they been emasculated in Hollywood. And that's why Bruce Lee was such a big deal for us, right? Very specifically because of this emasculation and, having to deal with this in the real world, because it affects how our lives were in the real world. And that's just true, And I think it's not something necessarily that people thought about because of things like the model minority, because of things like perpetual, it's like, they're fine. They're the model minority. They're fine. So that it creates this sense that we are fine, when actually we have to deal with a lot of shit. So man, I think, today you see more Asian American roles. that's why Shang-Chi's important too, right? We see more roles like this that are happening. I will say behind the scenes, movies that I do, Come As You Are also has an Asian American lead, has a Chinese American lead. He's Canadian.
It's okay, man. Same problem, just in Canada.
Yeah, but and we had a rule in that movie. The rule was on Come As You Are that because the 3 leads is an Indian dude, a Chinese dude, and a white dude. And I was like, our rule is, because we improv'd a lot of that movie, we're never going to talk about race ever. Like, never bring up your race once, because it's not about that. It's all about normalizing. It's all about normalizing us. We're not, pointing it out in a way, sometimes in a way, doesn't do us justice in certain situations, So anyway, I will say that everything that I have going on has a very positive Asian American, aspect to it, even the Valet. And I think, honestly, I think it's amazing. It's amazing to see that.
Yeah, what I like about everything you're saying is people don't like. I was speaking at a book signing yesterday, and it was my own book at my own building, right, with my fiance, my friends, and people invited. And people, without knowing it, you're gonna have really. I was like, oh, that's my niece. My niece is half white, half Hispanic, looks white, and I go, that's my niece. And without them knowing, they go, oh, you and your wife have cute babies, and she does this.
Jesus.
And I look, and I do this brief pause for a second, right? And I'm like, dude, we're in 2022, right? Like, this is a nightmare. This is 2022. And what you realize at that moment is there's still that education, and the education comes from Hollywood and music, right? Where you get Jeremy Lin, who who gets made fun of for the dreads, but you got Kenyon who's got the loyalty on his neck, right? And that's the funny things that happen. When you see these changes, do you think that the biggest issue is we don't have enough guys coming out there and trying to act, or do you really think that the second issue is us as a collective whole don't support each other the way that the African American community does? 'Cause I've heard this from other Asian actors and directors, and they're like, dude, Tyler Perry puts out a movie, the community comes. Rich Crazy Asians came out, it was Hispanics and African Americans, the white, and then the Asians 5 weeks into it started coming into it, right? Do you feel that's true? Because what people don't realize is we're so segregated in our communities, right? It's not even like, oh, you're from China, I'm from Taiwan. What part of China are you from? What part of Taiwan are you from? Like, people don't realize that. Do you think that's a big issue on why it is what it is? And how can we change that mechanic to influence the branding? Because we obviously have buying power when it comes to Dota 2 and video games of that sort. But how do we do that in Hollywood?
That's such a good question. I feel like I've been talking about this for 20 years because it's always a thing. It's always a thing about there's a lot to that. And I think you covered a lot of it. And I think part of it is, the way Hollywood works, of course, is on star power, right? So like, that's just a reality. Like, how do you get money for a movie? Like, you need to attach stars, and because that financiers feel like that's what makes the money, and they're right. So how many Asian American stars are there? 3. That, and if there's 20 projects and 3 stars, what are you gonna do, right? I think there's not enough of that. I think there's not enough. I think a bit of that is left over from a culture that really veered away from the arts. I think there's a generation that just did not want their kids to go into the arts at all. But also that's part of that is not realizing how important the arts are. One of my best friends tells a story about when he was, I forgot, 12 years old. He made a painting for his mom for her birthday. And she's like, what the hell is this? And she's doing the garbage can, because art didn't mean much. Now, look, I mean, talk about cultural revolution, talk about all these things, art got put aside culturally, all these things happened. So you understand where that comes from culturally, but I think that's the price of it has been, the generation plus of Asian Americans who just wanted to be lawyers, who just focus so much on making money rather than the arts, not realizing how our place in society is very much connected to our place in the arts. So I think that's changing now, and I think it's important for us to make sure first of all, we have to understand that, and then we have to make our kids understand that. And I think, that is happening. Again, there's a lot of work to do. I don't want to take that away. There's tons and tons of work to do, but there is progress, and we have to just keep going on that progress. We have to take advantage of it. Because I think, for example, Joy Luck Club comes out, Better Luck Tomorrow comes out. Those are all like markers. Those were Crazy Rich Asians of their time, right? But they didn't go anywhere, like culturally. Like, there wasn't the next flock of Asian American, like, it didn't like blow up the Asian American world in Hollywood. Crazy Rich Asians, I think, did more for that than those movies did, as much as I love those movies, and so I think it's all about capitalizing. And I think for us now, we're capitalizing, but we need more. Like, we need to create more Asian American stars. Now, how do you create more stars? Is you need to have hit movies. That's the only way that the stars are made, by hits. So it's like, I think for me, the 4 Asian American projects that I have, I'm all about, let's find some new faces. Let's make more stars. We have to make more stars, but you only make more stars if people go see it. And I think, I think if Asian American people understood the power they have, the power of support is huge, and the return is a place in the culture, and changing perceptions in culture. That's a huge way to do it. Because I don't know if bitching on Twitter does it. There has to be a way to do it, and also you have to do it without alienating people. It's a very tricky business, and I think it takes time, but I think we're getting the platform to do it.
You know what I believe in, and this is just my private thought. I think one of my cousins, I don't know if you follow politics or not. My cousin's Yiling New, right? The girl from Chinatown in New York, right? The one who's supposed to be running for senator. That's my baby cousin, right?
Oh,
Small
wow.
world, right?
Wow.
So she's an activist and an advocator, and she's very good at what she does.
Yeah.
But it's my baby cousin. You know, I think a lot of the approach, I think especially as Asian men is as we're going out there and we're doing social media, but this is any model minority or any minority in general, you talk about yourself as yourself and less about the issues that exist, because I feel like the only way the issues are going to exist is by proving it. That's it. There's nothing else to talk about, right? Yeah. If you had to prove that you were a director, you had to be proving that you could be a director, right? That's what it is. I think a lot of times when we get these rallies and going from there, I mean, first off, culturally, we're all told to shy away from it, right? We're told not to cause trouble, and that's ingrained in us, right? Like we don't want to cause trouble because harmony is more important than anything else. That's just our culture, right? Yeah. Secondly, you know, as we're trying to show up and go from there, there's always that hidden Asian haterness, man. I hate that thing about it. Right? You know what I'm talking about? See that? I saw the sport. You know what I'm talking about? Oh, you drive an S500, well, I drive the 550. Like that stupid thing, right? That's that competitiveness that shouldn't exist, because how the hell is it going to help anybody if you want to be like that? Like when you see these other circles, like everyone's helping each other, you know? And I think that, like, to your point of everything you said, you got to show up. You got to talk about it. These have to be existences, but you have to advocate yourself as a person, you know, and take these opportunities, these spotlights, and go from there. And you're right. Maybe we didn't have a chance to do a lot of it, but I can tell you, you know, in the corporate world of CEOs and guys who are in finance, 7% are Asians. In the Fortune 7% are Asians. Yeah. 7. So I walk in a boardroom and no one else looks like me.
Right.
Yeah. No one else talks like me. No one has that. But that's the things that I think we have to focus on as human beings, because it just shows a real side and all the vulnerability. Like you grew up difficult. You grew up where your dad was a minority. You grew up where, similar to the Hispanic culture, the white culture, it was an economic issue, right? It wasn't racial was a problem, but there was the economics that we all had to deal with and really had to find ourselves, because even if you're born something else, the fact that you were poorer than anyone else made you feel lesser than, right? Those are the things that I think are so significant. And as I talk about that, you know, and I look at Hollywood, what do you think that something that people in Hollywood should start doing or stop doing to be more successful, to tell the story in a more pure way like it used to be?
Man, I mean, who knows? I think in the end you have to make, first of all, like, you know, I think in the end you still have to make a good movie. That's the very first thing. In the end, it's like you can make a movie with a great message. You can make a movie with all the, you know, all the faces you want in it. But if it's not a good movie, it doesn't really matter. In the end, you still have to make a good movie. In the end, it's like anything else. You still have to be skilled. You still have to. It's not just film. It's in everything, music, everything. You have to make sure what you're doing is good, because you have to earn it on that level too. But I think it's just about, I think it comes from like economics too. Again, like it's all about it. Economics, unfortunately, is just a part of Hollywood, right? It's not like we're making indie films and losing money and it's okay. You know, we're not all nonprofit, you know, and we can't be. So there's that tricky business of making something that, because, you know, Asian Americans are 6% of America, you know. So like, even if every Asian American went out and saw the movie, it's not enough. Can you make art that is digestible for everybody? And that's why I talk about humanity a lot, because I think the real trick is to make a movie that everyone can relate to on a human level, and at the same time give people a bit more understanding of us, and normalizing us, and, you know, keeping us, you know, not being a perpetual foreigner, you know, like being a part of America. Like, you know, look, I mean, the uptick in Asian American hate is a thing, obviously, right? And it's one of those things where it's like, oh, it's our turn in the box. I mean, America is always going to have this box, and it's always going to be someone's turn in there. It's currently, I feel like, our turn in there for whatever reason, you know. But I think media has a role to play in helping that for all things, you know. Muslims before us, right? So I think, you know, and I think there's I think it's just about the people who have the power to do this, continue to work to do this, make sure that we use our opportunity to do it, and then inspire the next generation to do it. I do think that our next generation will be more like, they grew up in a world. Like, for example, I'll never forget the very first time I saw on TV people playing mahjong. I've been playing mahjong since I was 5 years old. So, but
So don't play against you is the point.
yeah, but like, I watched Dim Sum, Wayne Wang's movie. Wayne is a great mentor of mine. I shot 3 movies for him, and I remember like turning to my dad. I must have been like 13, 10, I don't know what it was, but I remember turning to my dad and being like, "Whoa, that's our life on TV." Like, it blew my mind. Like, I never even for 1 second even considered the idea that I could see our lives on TV, because it was all just, that's a different thing. We don't belong there. That's not our thing. It was subconsciously. And I remember it literally blew my mind to the point where I told my dad, I was like, that's like that. I didn't even know that was possible. Our kids luckily don't have to grow up with that, even that idea, and I don't think our kids should grow up with that idea. They need to grow up understanding that we have a place here, and I think about my dad to me, to my daughter, that's important. That it's important that we pass along that we don't just like, we don't just fall into a shell. And I think, as I say, like, it's like you said, culturally it's normal to do that, but we have to do our best to fight that. And I still very much feel like it's like that. There's also, but when I say there's more Asian American directors than there ever have been, there's also the most Asian American executives that I've ever seen, and it's great. It's great, and we're all doing our best, I will say. But it requires us actually working. Can't just rest.
I love hearing that, because you talk about a great story, right? And people don't realize the length and time that you have to put into directing a movie with all these different components, right? You're basically the CEO, right? You got to deal with finance, board of directors, studios, and then team members, employees, whole entire staff. And you have to keep them motivated, right? Because no one can see this project until it's in, and you have to be time sensitive, and you have to make sure that you're on budget, right? You have to put that together in a very mass world. How do you motivate these people to continue to do what they're supposed to be doing and have the faith that this is going to be the story that everyone believes in? Because that's difficult, right? You're the captain of the ship. You have to do your very, very best. But I think a lot of times, as business owners or artists or anything else, we're all in the same queue. You have to motivate people to really get them to the finish line to create this massively impressive, good project. How do you get that done when you're doing filmmaking?
Yeah, I mean, it's part of good leadership is always making sure people have a North Star. They need to feel like they're going somewhere, and they need to feel like what we're doing is important. I remember before I was a director, again, I was a DIT, I was a DP. I took real interest in when I felt motivated and when I didn't. And like, I'll never forget working on this TV show. The very first TV show I worked on was at Fox, and I was, again, early 20s, straight out of film school. I actually dropped out of film school, but I was like, oh, like, I'm in a studio, I'm at Fox, we're on these sets, on these stages with these people, with actors I recognize and directors. And I'll never forget feeling this like, oh man, I'm on this great show. And then I'll never forget the DP sitting next to me. I was a DIT at the time. But I remember the DIT sitting next to me, sitting there, cynical, older, just like, this show sucks. This show sucks. I should have done a different show. Why did I take this show? And then suddenly, my entire mindset in 3 seconds flat reversed. And I was just like, oh wait, this show sucks. What am I doing here? And I remember actually like thinking about that, like thinking about my emotional turn and how the leadership made that happen for me. And I've never forgot it, because that was, and so I think for me, I'll just, specifically about the Valet, again, I think something as broad as humanity is broad, but I think, again, something that I think people can latch onto, and something that people can feel like is important. And, I think it comes to also, picking scripts. The Valet spoke to me in a pretty deep way when I read it, And I just think it's about communicating that passion and communicating exactly what the movie means to me. And the movie has a bunch of meanings to me, beyond beyond um beyond the movie being about finding, human connection in a place that you wouldn't expect it, telling a story about my father, which I think people also appreciate, because I think when I say this movie's about my father, I think they can see their own fathers in them too, especially if they had that kind of experience, and and but then I also think the movie is very much about good guys can finish first, because I'll be honest, for me growing up, nice guys finish last was a very difficult thing for me. It's something that very much affected my upbringing. The idea that nice guys finish last is I mean, everyone knows that saying. And so, I grew up feeling like I couldn't be nice. I needed to be like, and I think that was against my nature, but I had a relatively, difficult high school. I got in a lot of trouble in middle school, something that I think today I wouldn't have survived from, because the culture is so different. But I got a lot of second chances, and I just think, yeah, I think the idea that nice guys can finish first, which is a big part of this movie, and even a line in the movie practically, not quite as on the nose, but that idea is also an important part of this movie. And I think the ability to speak to these things, to speak about what these movies mean to you, and how the art, because like I was working on a movie in China, and at the time I was young, and I remember working with the AD, and I remember saying like, we're making movies, like this is great. This is like, it's almost like what we're doing is ridiculous. It's great. Like we're making believe, and we get paid to do this. It's amazing. And I remember him stopping me like, well, hold on, dude, wait. Like what we do is very important, because, not that we should take ourselves too seriously. There's a balance to all that, but he's right. He was right. Like what we do does influence people's opinion. And it sets into people's brain, whether you like it or not, and so I remember kind of taking stock in that too, where it's like what we do is important, and what we're saying is important. And pain is temporary, but film's forever. The film that we make is there forever. If we make a film that's irresponsible, has an irresponsible message, that's there forever. And you don't know what group might take that movie and use it the wrong way to influence others. So I think going at it like that, and making sure people understand what you're doing. I think a movie is so singular too, and I think making people understand what we're doing is important, and why we're doing it is important, and the message we're telling, and then hiring people who believe in that message. I think a lot of it, like a lot of a director's job is hiring everybody. So for me, when in the interview process, it's very much about, look, this is what the movie means to me. What's it mean to you? And if I get someone who feels like who's just like, nah, we're just here to make a movie, probably won't hire them.
I love that, because I talk about how character trumps talent, right? I always talk about, because you might be the most talented person, if your character sucks, no one's working with you.
Yeah.
Right? That's just, in my business, I have a no dickhead rule. Like I won't work with you if you're a dickhead. That's just who I am, right? That's just what I don't care who you are, what you make, how much money, because you're not making my life harder because this is another marriage.
Yeah.
And you're talking about this hiring process, right? Talking about hiring actors and actresses. What makes these guys stand out? I know that what the movie means to you is one thing, but is there a particular skill set that when you see them that can enhance their ability to get hired from someone like you? What is that? What is that it factor that really says this is the guy?
I mean, I think a lot of it's chemistry, right? That's the reality. Like, every movie's a startup. You're hiring, you're putting all these people together, and there's just you're throwing a bunch of chemicals into a pot.
Yeah.
But it's like you said, character is everything. So when I interview somebody, there's so much about that. Even as a DP, because a DP also hires the people under. So I would always look mostly. The thing I look for most, I would say, if I just get micro about it, is does this person find challenges annoying or find challenges fun? Because I think there's a real delineation between those two types. I've found, because when there's a challenge for me, like, oh, by the way, we lost the location for tomorrow. It's also going to be raining, and I'm like, that's interesting. Like, how do we solve this problem? It's like solving the problem is part of the fun. And in filmmaking, you're solving a problem every 5 seconds, right? Or it's like, oh my God, like, ugh, sucks. You know,
Right.
yeah, like that's not what I need. You know, I'm a person, and I think filmmaking is you know, is very much about the team. You know, so I'm a person who needs a very specific kind of energy around me. You know, and I think I look for that particular energy, and and you know, and I also look like I also want to hire the most talented people I possibly can. So it's just like you said, like it's finding the combination of the two, which is always tricky. But if I had to choose between the two, I would put character, and you know, it's like, and like I think the actors are a good example. Like Eugenio brought so much particular authenticity to that role. You know, I was aiming for my dad, and he brought so much to that particular idea, you know. We need that. We like, you know what they say about acting. Acting's all about truth, right? And so it's all about actors who can find the truth. Samara the same way. Sam came in and gave such a great take on that character, because that character is, you know, in the first act supposed to be a little bit unlikable, you know, and she brought this particular humanity to it and this kind of wackiness to it. And all these ideas, all these authentic ideas to it. And that's what you want. You don't want, you know, you don't want someone, and I think all that shows is like passion, you know, all that shows is they see it on a deeper level. And I think as artists, honestly, like it's important for us to have a deeper level, whether people get it or not. It's important for us to have it, at least.
No, I love it. The interconnectedness and that deeper level is so significant in everything you're doing in business and life and moving forward with it. You know, I mean, 13-year-old Richard Wong, who must be pretty happy at this point. I mean, you've done it, man. You've done it. You created movies. You're creating films. You're telling stories that are inspirational. It doesn't mean you stop, but it does mean the one thing that I think in our culture we don't do is celebrate a little bit of the W's, right? And that's significant. And like, this is a big W, man. I mean, through your art and your photography and your storytelling and your natures and what I will tell you from the film, and I want to say this just on camera, you're real. You're real. It was spoke in realness. It wasn't anything besides real. And yes, it could have been, you know, one way or the other, but you told the story with so much authenticity without it being too serious, which is very encouraging to people, I think. And it's a cute story. It really is, man. So I really commend you on that. And thank you for telling those stories. And, you know, before we sign off, you know, I always ask this question: what's one piece of advice that you would just give everybody, man? One honest piece of advice to keep going and following their dreams and creating, we're all creating stories in our own ways, right? Our own beautiful stories, the way we're telling shape society. You're telling in a very different way, which is beautiful. What can you give that piece of advice to everyone else?
Wow, one. Well, it's hard to narrow down to one. But thank you for saying that, by the way. You know, I do think the movie's a comedy, but I always think comedy is the best way to smuggle in really important stuff. You know,
100%.
I always tell everybody that I always try to turn all my comedies into dramas, and I think that combination of the two things, you know, I think the drama seals in, or the comedy helps seal in the drama, and vice versa. But you know, I think as it comes to down to one thing, I don't know. You know, when I think about my time as a DIT. I worked, the very last show I worked on was a show called Arrested Development, and like the cool thing about Arrested Development at the time was, which was novel at the time, was they hired a lot of indie filmmakers, you know. And when I was a DIT, back in those days, it's the job is quite different now, but back then I did live color and I did best monitor, so I sat next to the director. So I think in sitting with those directors on that particular show, what I realized was they went out and just made something at some point, and that's how they became a director. They weren't like, I had a lot of friends at the time being like, you know, pretty young, who were just like, I'm a director. They just would say that, but they didn't actually do it, you know? And I think what I learned from talking to those people, and you know, that show had great directors, had Patty Jenkins and the Russo brothers and Chandrasekhar, like all these really interesting directors, right? And what I learned was you have to go do it. Like if you don't go do it, then you're not it, you know? And then that summer being inspired by that summer, I went out, spent $15,000 and made my first feature called Colma the Musical, which is on Criterion Channel now, if you haven't checked it out. But it's also, you know, but it got picked up by Lionsgate and got a Spirit Award, and all that is because I just went out and did it. And then, by the way, that ended my DIT career. And like, and it changed my life. And I think you don't change your life if you don't do something about it, you know, because I think it's easy to, it's especially today where it's, you know, I mean, this is cliche, but it's true. Like today, it's even easier to make a movie. There's cameras everywhere and all this stuff. But I think in the end, you know, Colma, I think Colma had an interesting story, and you know, it's very Asian American without being Asian American, and I think it appealed to a lot of people. It appealed to, you know, and I think just it's a trick of telling your story, and not making it, you know, not making it something that you put in a closet. You know, I always equate it to like, oh, the painter who paints a painting and then puts it in the closet. You know, like filmmaking isn't about that. It's about reaching as many people as you possibly can. It's about showing your truth to as many people as you can, hoping that it matters and hoping that it makes an impact. And you know, and I think the number one thing about that is like, you know, you don't want to be hired. You don't want to be hired for a job or do a movie or anything like that, trying to predict what other people think. Like, you need to have something to say, and you need to be you want people to see what you do and like it for what you do. You're not trying to make it for them. You're making it for yourself, and you're making it for yourself, and you hope that people can appreciate that. So I think a lot of it's about staying true to yourself, and a lot of it's about, you know, having the confidence to just go out and do something. Because I think ultimately, I've you know, now that I'm, you know, 46, you know, I've seen a lot of my friends be kind of like, oh, I'm waiting for the perfect script. I'm waiting for the perfect time. I'm waiting for this and that. And it's like, and then you know, 24 years later, they haven't done anything. You know, I think there's value to believing in yourself enough that you can make something good, and then you have something to say that's valuable. And I think that takes a very particular kind of confidence. And I think, you know, I think for us parents out there, it's part of us is giving our kids that. But I think, you know, you also have to find that yourself.
I love that. I love, you know, everyone waits. The reality is, it's the guys who just go after it, right? Because even if I'm losing, I'm learning that experience, and you still have to learn no matter how good this script is. And I'll basically outwork you. So basically, what it comes down to, I will outwork you, singularly get it done, and learn from every experience. Richard, I love that. Richard, give us your social media handle so people can follow you.
Yeah, on Instagram, it's Rich Wong SF.
Richard Wong SF. Richard Wong, director of the great movie Valet. Check it out on Hulu if you haven't yet. Richard, I look forward to seeing all the things that you're going to be doing, and I appreciate your time. And thank you for joining another edition of Pandanomics Podcast. We'll see you guys soon. Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Richard.